Hello everyone, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I'm at the McLean House and Old Appomattox Courthouse where the surrender of Lee to Grant took place on April 9th, 1865. Standing on the front porch of the house, I'm going to take you inside. I'm going to show you where the room and where it all took place. All right, so come on, follow me. Now, the McLeans didn't actually build this house. This was the guest house for the Rainey Tavern, and the Raineys actually lived here. And then the McLeans, who used to live near the Battle of Bull Run 1 and 2, or Battle of Manassas 1 and 2, the Civil War actually started in their backyard. They wanted to leave where the fighting was, so they came here in 1863 thinking they were going to escape the war. Little did they know the war would actually follow them. In this room behind me, this is where the McLeans would have actually have lived. Like, this was a house. This happened just to be a house. It was like one of the nicest houses in the area. The town was on decline by the time the Civil War started, and it got to this point because of the railroad, and everyone was moving towards where the railroad was. But as I turn around here, this is the room. This is where Lee and Grant met the afternoon of April 9th, 1865. Now, Lee got here first, about 1 p.m. The battle is still just kind of finishing, and right behind me, this marble table here, that's where Lee sat. And then over here, that's where Grant would have sat. Now, Grant got here 30 minutes late. Now, Lee was in all belief going to be arrested and be, tried for treason. So he came in his best uniform. He had the idea this was going to happen today. See, they all escaped. They all evacuated Richmond April 3rd. And instead of, taking Richmond and celebrating, Grant followed. Now, Lee thought that leaving Richmond would buy him time to get to Appomattox station, to get resupplied and carry the war on for a while. In fact, his officers throughout the evacuation from Richmond to here, some of them are saying, this isn't going to go very far. We're out of munition. We're out of supplies. Let's surrender. Lee's like, no, I'm not doing it. We're not surrendering. He still has a couple of his really close allies saying, no, we can make it. We can do it. And the breaking point comes, at the end of on the night of the 8th and into the morning of the 9th, when several of Lee's soldiers get captured. They're down many, many men. They can't replenish their soldiers. And that the station with all the resupplies that they were hoping to get to had been recaptured. And Lee woke up on the morning of the 9th with the Union at his rear and at his front. And when the battle, even though they were winning the battle, they weren't going to be able to really escape or get anywhere. Lee finally wrote to Grant. They've been writing back and forth for a number of days about meeting, and they decided to meet here in Appomattox Courthouse and then the McLean House for the surrender. So, Grant got here about 1:30, and the whole process took, from about 1:30 until 3 o'clock. Now, they didn't really speak all that much. In fact, most of all the negotiations was written out by hand. There was a Native American soldier named Parker that actually transcribed the entire thing. And it was funny, because Parker, being a full Native American, was in here doing all the describing, while Custer was actually forced to stand outside. So Lee dismounted right outside the house here, right on the front lawn, and walked in here and waited in his best uniform. Like I said, now Grant came in not knowing that this was going to happen. He was still in his garbs, basically, as he describes them. He was caked in mud. He was dirty. He had been, planning for a long day of fighting. And about midday in the afternoon, the war was coming to an end for the Army of Northern Virginia and the Grant's forces. Now, Grant would have to continue going because several forces of the Confederacy did not surrender. This was only the Army of Northern Virginia. There were several armies in North Carolina, South Carolina, and even some in Texas that kept fighting. And it wasn't until June 19th, 1865, did the last of the Confederate cities, Galveston, Texas, fall, and all those slaves freed, because the Emancipation Proclamation said, you guys were all in a rebellion-held territory. When the proclamation came through, you're all now free. But this is the room. again, a lot of the furniture in here is reproduction. The originals are in the Smithsonian. The house was actually disassembled a few years after the war because they wanted to preserve it. They thought this area was actually already in decline during the end of the war, and it never got past the front yard. They reconstituted it by the National Park Service in 1940. So about 100 years after it was initially built, it was rebuilt on the original foundation. 90% of the materials for the house are original to the house, so it's just the inside furniture stuff that the Smithsonian took after the war. So this is basically the McLean House and the Appomattox Courthouse area where the Civil War unofficially ended with General Lee's surrender to Grant, April 9th, 1865. And it's a beautiful house. I recommend, if you can get a chance to get down here. I'm about 80 miles west of Richmond. I'm about an hour or so away from Washington Lee University, where General Lee is actually buried. There is a museum here not too far away for the American Civil War, and Lee's uniform that he wore in this room is on display there, along with many of the captured Confederate flags that Grant's army took. So there's a lot of history. You can see here there's a graveyard with mostly Confederate soldiers that died during the battle. And then there is one Union soldier that was found several years after the war, and they interred him with his fellow countrymen, because the Union had won. They were North and South were all one nation, so he's buried with them. But that's Appomattox Courthouse and McLean House in Appomattox. Thank you so much for watching this video. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, stay wise, and I'll see you in the next one.